I see you are all young students, novices to the whims of magic in Icilion, unsure of its purpose in our lives, confused by its happening on our world. I have heard from Valdremor that Oliver had informed you of the mythos of the moon, the mysteries that circle it and its connection to magic upon this world, and yet, even today we know naught about it. Astronomers have worked countless hours trying to understand its secrecy. Is it a deity? Is the moon a being itself? Or is it something so eldritch and abnormal that we lack the comprehension to understand it? The night and moon and the stars have been interlinked with magic for some time. This much we have discerned and understood. But what of other magics? Sorcery and wizardry is connected to the magics of the stars, the moon and the night sky. Bardic magic is interlinked with the charm and pizzazz of the caster. As you know, paladins and clerics are supposedly gifted by blessings from the divine, whatever that means. Warlocks, they have patrons that gift them abilities, and yes, warlocks are permitted within the halls of the college. Rangers and druids blessed by nature. But what of the other school of magics? The one that is so easily forgotten due to its somewhat horrid origin and nature. I am not talking about necromancy, but hemomancy, blood magic. My name is Grayson, but if any of you are from Valpin, I am also known as the Bloodied Wolf. I am here to give you the origins of the source of blood magic, as it is a recent woeful tale upon the lands of Icilion, one that many forget, or choose to forget. I shall tell this tale from the perspective of my mentor, a third person if you will. The Night of the Bloodied Stars. As many of you know, the kingdoms of Thymesia, one by one, have fallen deep into the clutches of the Church. Foxton has gained dominance, and its pope now dictates the entire provinces of all Thymesia, aside from us here in Lochwyn. We refused, and subsequently became detached from all other kingdoms, aside from Valpin and Mayamor, slightly. This resulted in the Church banning all kinds of magic in its entirety, all forms that were not blessings of the divine. Clerics and paladins were still allowed to carry out their magical deeds as it was seen as a miracle, but anyone else was seen as a monster. Many, such as the high-ranking scholars of Lochwyn and the magical advisors to each kingdom, did not approve of such notion. However, the Church's army is mighty, as is their treasure vault. Many bowed to greed or fear of being crushed by the might of the inexhaustible paladins under the command of Arch-Paladin Horus and Arch-Paladin Halon. Those who were casters of any kind were chained, dragged, and humiliated in the streets of Foxton, all while the crowds cheered for the paladins for taking down another heretic. Droves of those who had innate spell-casting abilities were taken to the prisons, and even the main cathedral itself, stripped of all rights and forced to worship the divine to the fullest extent. This broke many men, women, and even some children, causing them to become the beings we know as the Restful, a term heavily used by the Church to indicate that their heretical mind has become sedated, eased, and saved from the malign forces of magics. Others, well, they were simply executed, or had fingers, hands, or even entire arms removed to stop any kind of spellcasting. Others fell into the clutches of the Church easily, letting go of their prior knowledge to become one of the clerics or even paladins. It was a nightmarish time, many trying not to linger on it. Raids carried out by Horus and the other paladins searched through every village, every town, and even the walled cities. They sought to find any other magical archetype and bring them to their knees. The kings and queens of every province were powerless to do anything about these events. The king of Ambience, also known as the Blazing Bull, spoke to Horus about constructing a huge slave mine in his Dragonspine Mountains. Horus agreed, and other prisoners of those who were murderers, pillagers, thieves, and so on were sent there so that Foxton could focus on the spellcasters. In Foxton, a mighty horrid prison known as the Prison of the Wailing Sorrow was where all sorcerers, wizards, bards, druids and rangers, and any other magical archetype was taken there. But there, during the day, the prisoners of all magical origin coerced a plan. My personal mentor, and the beginner of all blood magic and blood magic teachings, the originator of the hexes, Velarius, a human Nyronaut, a dream strider, once a sorcerer. He was stripped with all of his magics and became a slave to Foxton. During one fateful day, he conjured the idea that brought all other spellcasters that had not been maimed together. He brewed the idea of stemming magic from elsewhere, not from a script, a tome, or even innate spellcasting. He delved into the idea of sacrificing one's flesh and blood to give life to hemomancy, blood magic. Some were repulsed by this idea, but many seemed intrigued. They would harm oneself to draw blood and channel any remaining mana within themselves to make their own blood magic in nature, to use it to cast spells or even empower oneself. Many of you, I imagine, are repulsed by this idea, or even questioning my mental sanity or even my own. But this idea birthed a new form of magic onto the world. It is powerful. It is earthly. It is true. But sadly, it came at a cost. Many had gathered in the halls of the prison under the cover of night. With minimal candlelight, they gathered. My mentor would be the one to start a ceremony with his crowd of initiates, his idealists, all who sought freedom from the horrid prison walls. Below his feet, as they approached his makeshift altar, was a bowl soaked in blood, either from the guards they had killed in stealth or sacrifices from their own bodies. Many bared new scars from their self-wounding. But all of them, together in unison, began to focus their mana onto the blood bowl, and it shimmered with light and responded in kind. The blood drifted out from the bowl and began to flow around each member, all 30 of them. It swam around them like an eel. It responded to their whim and will. Blood magic had begun its first steps in life. They practiced in the early night, using it to cast spells that inflicted horrific wounds on dead bodies mainly. They even channeled other abilities through the blood, such as lightning, frozen spells, or even flame spells. The entire chamber had become drenched as they practiced, all becoming fascinated, obsessed, and dare I say it, fed from its potential. As they practiced onto the highest point of the moon at midnight, did it begin to rain. Heavy downpours that slammed against the windows. My mentor noted that it was a different hue. It was not clear. As he raised his candle-lit lantern, he noted with a surprise that it was not raining regular water droplets, but heavy globules of blood. He decided to push against the prison yard door, surprised to find it unlocked, and stood outside, as he became soaked in the harsh raining blood. The stars, all crimson in colour. The moon hung low, reddish in colour too, like an emblazoned eye watching him. As he stood there in awe, foul howls could be heard in the dead of night, as a newfound hunger had started to overtake some of the wildlife across Dionysia. Wolves and even stags, amongst other woodland creatures, became obsessed with hunting and eating in the bloodied night. The stars twinkled and glistened with a ferocity that juxtaposed their prettiness. I remember what my mentor told me, when he stopped gazing at the bloodied stars, the screeches and howls as the prison sprung to life echoed from the door. Some of the blood magic proved to be too much for the initiates. Their need for power became a thirst as they began to sprout fangs of vampires long since thought dead and extinct, and began to ravage one another. My mentor and 14 of the other Hexer initiates seemed unaffected by the blood magic. The bloodied stars seemed to have an effect that changed many, but not only those inside the prison, but all across Dionysia. Cannibalism and vampire attacks tripled. It was a night of chaos and life, as blood magic had fully been born and established by the blessings of the sanguine moon. I shall go into more detail next week, my dear students, for there is much to this tale.